Hello all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today, we're taking it back in time a little bit. We're going to be reviewing the film Lost in Translation. And we are not alone today. We are joined by a very special guest, a dear pod friend. Andrew Corns is back, y'all. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself?
For relaxing times, make it Movies and Us time. It's so nice to be back talking to the two of you. I've been sitting with that one in the chamber all week. Wow. I was so excited to drop that one. Maybe it'll end up on a t-shirt one day. I don't know. But it's great to connect with you two again.
This is one of those moments. We are primarily audio only, but what y'all missed, if you're listening to the audio, is Andrew slowly but surely weaving in to frame this glass of dark, I don't know if that's iced tea or if that's actually whiskey, but one or the other. You're sipping on something.
Just like Bill Murray, I am not drinking actual whiskey at this moment. Though I wish it was.
I think that's one of the best intros we've had on the pod in a while. That was well good. Well done. All right, Sarah, kick us off with an IMDb summary for Lost in Translation.
A fading movie star falls for a lonely young woman in Tokyo.
All right. One sentence summaries. Let's round table it. Andrew, what is yours as our guest?
Okay, this one was a little bit challenging for me. I don't know about the two of you. The previous two episodes I've done with you, Princess Bride, First Reformed, I thought those were a little bit tough, but at the end of the day, I was happy with my one sentence summary. This one was a little tricky, and it took me until this morning to unlock my summary. And so we're talking about a movie about translation in the title. And so I thought, let me kind of mine the idea that this movie might have different titles in different languages. And so what I did was I found a couple of different countries that had titles that were not lost in translation. And those translated titles, two of them smashed together, came up with a really good one sentence summary. And so I have the Portuguese and the Polish translations of this film, which would be Love is a Strange Place in Between Words.
Wow.
Okay. Well done.
I need to think about that for a minute.
I love the way different countries will sometimes interpret a title, and I thought those are two really interesting approaches to this film because love is a strange place in this movie. And what's happening in between words is very profound in this movie, as we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Well done. There's a whole backstory to that, too. That was great. Sarah, what is your one sentence summary?
And Drew, I love that yours is like contemplative and beautiful and profound. Here's my one sentence summary. What happens in Tokyo stays in Tokyo.
Nice.
I went the exact opposite direction.
Nice. I think I'm also marching in a similar direction as Sarah's, which is creepy man behaviors are certainly not lost in translation. I have a lot of feelings about this movie.
There's a lot to unpack in that sentence.
Yep. All right. Well, let's share our kind of temperature checks and how we received this film. Was this our first time watching it, or had we seen it many moons ago? How many times have we seen it? All of that context. This came out in 2003, which actually, quick context for why we're even talking about this movie, which is that we will be joining a guest episode on the Revisionist Almanac podcast with Andrew coming up here in a couple of months here. Andrew, do you want to share a little bit about kind of the concept and premise of your show and 2003 being an upcoming year for us to cover?
Sure. So anyone who's not familiar, what I do is I sort of jump into the time machine and I go back to a specific film year, and I'll dive really deeply into that year with a couple of guests, and we'll look at all of the movies that were nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, all the acting awards. We'll watch everything that we can, and then we'll also watch a bunch of the stuff that wasn't nominated. And what we'll do then when we get onto the episode is we'll kind of wipe everything clean. We'll each give our picks for what we think should have been nominated and what should have won in those categories. And then what we'll do is we'll turn it over to the online social media crowd, and we'll let people vote to determine what actually was the best picture in a year or the best director in a year. And I was so excited that the two of you were willing and dared to take this journey, because it is an intense journey, and one that I think the two of you are going about in a very smart way, taking your time with it as opposed to cramming 40 movies into a month, which other people have taken that approach. But yeah, I'm very excited. And I think you two specifically picked 2003. It was one of the years that you gave me on a list of a bunch of years. And so I'm not 100% sure why the two of you picked 2003 yet. Maybe we'll talk about that now. Maybe we'll talk about that on my show later in the year. But this was a very exciting year for me. I was junior in high school, so I have vivid memories of this film year.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, we're excited for that episode, and yeah, we're doing our homework well in advance, having plenty of time to sit with all of our thoughts about all these films before we get to talk about them soon here at the end of the year, which will be really great. So that's the context of, like, if you're like, well, why this random 2003 movie? That's why. And you'll see a lot more coming out on the feed in the upcoming few months as well. I think we covered Matchstick Men a couple of weeks ago, and a few others as well this year. So you'll see a lot of these popping up. Okay, now let's dive in. What was your relationship with this film before, and maybe some of your high-level thoughts about the movie without spoiling it quite yet?
So
Andrew.
I saw this movie in high school. I don't think I definitely didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it probably like right after it hit, whether it was HBO or Showtime or Cinemax, or like one of those home box office, like, premium cable channels. I definitely saw it. I remember this Oscars year, and I remember all of my friends were really into The Lord of the Rings. And I won't go into too much depth about my relationship to The Lord of the Rings, because that's not what we're here to talk about. However, I remember in 2003, I was a big, big fan of this film. I love Bill Murray's comedy. I was sort of raised on his comedy, and so it was interesting for me to sort of see him transition into this more dramatic role. And I just remember really enjoying this film at the time, and it's sort of stuck with me over the years. I go back to it quite frequently. I've watched it 3 times in the last week for this recording, and I have some strong opinions about it. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I do think it's very important. I'll say that. I think it has a lot of important themes that are worth talking about.
All right. That was a good teaser trailer for some of your thoughts. I'm like, what are the things I want to hear now? But okay, Sarah and I can share ours, and then we'll dive fully in. So Sarah, tell me your thoughts about Lost in Translation without spoiling the film quite yet.
Yeah, so this was my first time watching this film, and I struggled with it a little bit. I'm very curious, Jen, like your thoughts on this, because part of me loves it. I love the way that it's filmed. I like a lot of the like cinematography and those choices. I like that it's just like these little vignettes as these people are just hanging out in Tokyo. But I was very nervous for Scarlett Johansson the entire time. Like, obviously, like, Bill Murray, nice guy, happy guy. He's What About Bob? Like, we love him. But I was very aware of the, like, 30-plus year age difference, and neither one of them is in a very good place. And so I was just a bundle of anxiety for kind of the entire film. So I think if I were to watch this again, now kind of knowing where the film goes, I might be able to enjoy it more and just really like settle in and just kind of go with the flow. But yeah, I was real anxious watching this movie.
Yep. This is one of those characters that I wanted to rescue out of the movie. Like, let's get you out of this situation that you find yourself in. I think I was tracking with this first time watching this movie. I actually thought that I had seen this movie before, but I was confusing it with another Sofia Coppola movie that is similar in like tone and atmosphere called On the Rocks, which is a 2020 film. It's not this movie, but it has a similar like unexpected like adventure through the streets of, I think, New York City, with these two like reforming a connection and a bond when they're both in kind of tough places. So I had thought that this was similar movie. It's not. But Man, there's so much that I wanted to love about this movie. And in general, this premise, this concept, this theme, I think is so interesting and usually gets me to just fall for the film of like these two strangers that find themselves in an unlikely place, an unexpected place. They're lonely, they're disconnected, but they find this sort of deep emotional intimacy in kind of an unexpected place. And I think I was tracking with that for the first hour of the film. And then it's almost as if the closer these two get in their bond and relationship, the more I'm like, there's some moments and there's some gestures and some things that I think were difficult and uncomfortable to watch, being aware of that 30-year gap. That's all fine. And I think actually part of the point of the film actually is to play with that changing feeling of discomfort that we have, where we're seeing this really beautiful human connection, but there's also all these like other layers and variables that are woven into that as well. I think all of that's very intentional. There's a moment at the end of the film that I think takes the air out of the balloon a little bit, and I wished that they didn't do that. One choice, and I think it could have made this film a lot more interesting to think about without that little moment at the end, which I'm sure we'll talk about. This film would be really interesting to put in conversation with the film Columbus, because it's also two humans that are in kind of tough places, big age gap, but really centers the beauty of like a human connection that transcends beyond like romantic friendship. It's just a deep human connection that I think is like a really interesting contrast to the way that Lost in Translation tackles, I think, a similar theme and a similar concept, but maybe in a little bit more, it's playing in a lot of gray area, which is kind of the point. But it very much crosses a line into a gray area, out of the gray area. But yeah, the film, though, I'm excited to hear everyone's thoughts on. Okay. Let's give a spoiler alert here. If you haven't seen Lost in Translation, it's been over 2 decades, so we're diving fully in. And now I'm so curious, Andrew, to hear some of your thoughts about those important things that this film really embodies or is able to depict in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, so the first thing that always strikes me about this movie, it struck me about it in 2003 when I saw it, and it's stuck with me over the years as I've aged. When I saw the movie, I was effectively the age that Scarlett Johansson was when she was making the film. She was 17 at the time of making the film, and I'm shockingly a lot closer to Bill Murray's age now, which is kind of frightening, quite honestly, because I'm closing in on 40. And what the big takeaway for me with this movie is the idea of platonic male-female relationships and dynamics, because this movie, there's incredible intimacy, but their relationship isn't based on sex. And it's like, I think it's very important that a female directed this movie. If this was in a man's hands, it would feel very different. I think Sofia Coppola handled it with a lot of nuance and a lot of sensitivity. And I've always had a lot of female friends, and my wife has a lot of male friends, and like we both have pretty good comfort and security in each other and trust and everything. And so I've always found this movie to be interesting in the way that it handled the relationship between the two, because I never feel like the two of them are going to like push it too much. And to me, it feels like more of a, like you said, Jen, it feels like more of a human bond. Now, there's a couple of moments that you mentioned at the end that sort of break that a little bit. But for the most part, this movie, they hardly ever touch. And it's much more about them connecting on this deeper level because of the place of vulnerability the two of them are in. They're isolated. They're depressed in different stages of their life. So I'm always struck by just the idea of this relationship and a romantic movie not hinging on the idea of sex, which so many movies, especially in 2003, that was like the linchpin of a movie, was like at some point they're going to consummate the relationship and, you know, what comes of it. And I thought this movie sort of subverted expectations in a lot of ways, certainly at the time.
It was neat to see the way that like there was these details and gestures that signaled intimacy that are really subtle, and I intrigued to see in another watch more of those and catch more of those, because they're very subtle. Like the one that stands out to me is when they're just lying in bed chatting after one of their nights out, and I think his hand is just like touching her foot. And like that little detail, I think, was so significant because they're very far apart from each other on the bed. But there's still this desire to like be connected in some way, but to do it in this like really subversive, unexpected way. I think all of those little things were so interesting. And that's why I wish that at the end, it would have been left a little bit more open-ended. Like that, to me, that kiss feels like it breaks and pops the bubble of, oh my gosh, regardless of who you are and whether there's is romantic or not, like there's just a connection here. And I feel like the kiss kind of like leans it a little bit into like okay, we've now confirmed this is romantic and we're going to remember each other and all this stuff and whatnot. But I wish that there was just that whisper, which was, again, that signal of deep intimacy without the physical tied with it. So when they kissed, I was like, oh man, I was yelling at my screen. I would have liked to see everything but the kiss, like almost at the edge of the barrier, and it doesn't cross it. But I can see perhaps like this already is very subversive that even at just ending with a kiss, that was a little bit kind of a sweet gesture, is also still still accomplishes the goal of being subversive. I almost want it to be even more subversive, you know?
It's weird because like this movie for me works like for 99% of it, and it's literally the first frame of the movie and then the kiss at the end. Those are the only two parts that I have a little bit of trouble with. Like, and when I'm talking about the beginning, I'm talking about it literally opens on Scarlett Johansson's butt, and it's like it feels disconnected. And I've seen Sofia Coppola. I read an interview with her this week, and she was talking about watching it with her daughters, and she now finds that scene a little bit uncomfortable. And I thought, well, that's really interesting and revealing that, you know, she was in her 20s making this movie and she had a different perspective. And so I feel like that first scene and then the kiss at the end are the two moments that just don't feel like they jive with everything else, which everything else feels like it's really delicately handled. And there's just a couple of moments that, as movies age with time and culture changes and, you know, the standards and norms and everything, it feels like this movie has a couple of spots where you're like, that doesn't quite fly in 2025 versus 20 years ago.
And that's what's so interesting about, you know, doing this project and doing our homework is you see these things and you're like, wow, that probably worked a lot better in 2003 than it does in 2025. And so that's just so interesting to reflect on the ways that we have shifted and changed, the way that movies have shifted and changed. Because like when you're in it, you don't really feel it as much. But then you go back and watch a movie from 20 years ago and you're like, oh, yeah, things are a little bit different now. We would make some different decisions today.
And I at least appreciated that in that beginning scene, if I'll talk about that for just a moment, because it is it's a strange scene because it doesn't really have a place, quite honestly. And I at least appreciated when I was researching this movie, it's my understanding Scarlett Johansson was a little bit uncomfortable with that situation, and to sort of make her feel better about what she was about to do, Sofia Coppola stripped down into her underwear and actually like filmed herself in the scene to ease Scarlett into it. And I thought, okay, well, again, that's a situation where if that's a male director, that's not happening. He's just saying, you go do this. This is what's in the, you know. And so I'm always a little bit careful about how I treat this movie because, again, I think that Sophia has a much better grasp, especially if you look at her body of work, Virgin Suicides and Marie Antoinette, On the Rocks, all these different films. I think she does handle relationships and handle how women are viewed and the male gaze. She treats it with respect and is very careful in it. And so I do try to give her a little bit of grace because I do think she's actively thinking about it versus just what a male director would probably be doing in that moment.
And you feel that nuance and that care all throughout the film. You know, I love how much time we spend kind of in Charlotte's like internal world. And she is such a pillar of this film, and you see her, you know, in her struggles and in her questioning, and we just spend time with her in that hotel room as she's just contemplating, like, what am I doing with my life? And so I think there is a lot of, you know, a lot of tenderness, a lot of care for the subject matter that she shows, especially in the cinematography. Like, I loved the way that this was filmed. That is probably my favorite part of this, and one of the reasons why I'm excited to revisit it again is to be able to really focus in on all of those details, because the way that she frames shots is really interesting, and then the way that the camera moves is very intentional to, I think, help you feel especially what Charlotte is feeling in any given moment.
Have either of you been to Tokyo? And I only ask because my other big takeaway from this movie is it's so amazing the way Sophia captures what I've never been, but it feels like she captures the essence of Tokyo. I know she lived there for a long time. This movie's in a large degree sort of autobiographical and sort of details some of her relationships in her life. But I love the way that she captures the vibrancy of Tokyo and the busyness of it, and yet also the quiet pockets in it. But I've never been there, so I can't speak directly. I don't know if either of the two of you have.
I have. I went just a couple of months ago, actually, last fall. So it was very fresh. And one thing that I was thinking a lot about is how significant this being set in Tokyo is to the story. Because you see for so long in the opening section, like first 30 to 45 minutes, it heightens the loneliness that I think these two individual characters feel before they can even have that moment where they meet. Just even communicating simple things with others is challenging and difficult when you're in a culture that is so different from yours, when the language barrier is so high, and that feeling of like excitement when you just meet someone that you can just even have a conversation with. I think this highlights that so much. So I appreciate how much time we get at the beginning of the film to establish the loneliness and isolation that they both feel. It's almost as if we as the viewers are also just like so grateful by the time we get to see them meet, because we've been also trying to like fumble our way through and navigate some other place. And so, you know, it's true of like a lot of stories you hear about people that meet abroad and like end up meeting their partners or their spouses. Like there's something about being in a foreign place with somebody else that is from your home culture that kind of opens you up faster, and maybe there's a willingness to be more comfortable with each other first because there's a shared like, okay, no, we're in the same situation together, as you navigate kind of a very different environment from your home country. So I thought that like of all of the places that this could be set in, for these two Americans to be in a culture that is not just like language barrier very different, but also like value systems, communication styles, all of that is very different from the US. So that feels significant for how this story is structured and for it to be so effective.
And I think it's so funny how so early in the movie there are multiple things that happen with Bob, Bill Murray's character, where he's really like a fish out of water. When just the way she shoots him on the elevator, he's like head and shoulders above everyone. So like he's already sort of isolated from everyone else. He sort of looks giant like in comparison, in proportion. And I love the way that Sophia shoots Scarlett Johansson sort of sitting in the windowsill looking down on the city. Again, she's there with her husband, and I'm sure we'll talk about his character, because he is incredibly problematic to me, the way he just sort of completely disregards her. He has no interest in her feelings. He bulldozes everything. He's just not like he is totally disassociated from connecting with her in any sort of way. And so it's really fascinating how alone she is, even with her husband. That's a really shocking relationship dynamic there. Like the stuff going on with Bob, obviously his wife back at home and his kid, and he's missing a birthday event, and there's obviously stuff going on there. So like it makes sense that he's isolated and he's not happy to be there. He's clearly not happy with his status in his career. There's a lot of stuff going on with him, but in theory, she should be incredibly happy to be there. She even mentions that, you know, she sort of made the choice to go because she had nothing else going on in life. So like you would think that this would be a very exciting time for her. And because of the way her husband's treating her, I really sympathize for her situation. And she's doing so much to try to just try to find something there, like, but she's really isolated in that situation.
And it's really neat too to see how little chemistry they have together. You know, like in all of their dynamics, he sucks all of the space out of the room so that there's none left for her. And one of the moments that I really loved that is such a contrast to the like kind of scenes that we get with her and her husband is the first time that Charlotte and Bill Murray's character meet. They have a very short conversation and then they go their separate ways. But even in that short interaction, they can banter together a little bit. They can kind of like make jokes and like witty little comments together, and they both get it and they're both kind of on the same wavelength. And you kind of feel that it's a short interaction with a new stranger, but like there was a connection there. And I just love the subtlety of that scene because it doesn't last for very long. They don't have this deep heart to heart the first time they meet at the bar. And that feels like a subversion of a lot of the way that this film maybe feels structured like a rom-com or a romantic movie, but it's actually not. In a romantic movie, they would meet at the bar, have this really deep emotional heart to heart, and then go have a one-night stand and then figure out how to navigate the relationship afterwards and deal with the aftermath and implications of all of that, right? It's like everything happens so quickly, even the connection is overflowing and outpouring immediately as they share every nitty-gritty part of their deepest emotional selves. And I love that they don't do that at the beginning, but there is a connection in their banter, in their humor, in the way that they can kind of ride the same wavelength in conversation. And you don't feel that at all with her and her husband. I thought that subtlety and contrast is really interesting. There's no banter. There's no chemistry between her and her husband. He's not even like even listening to what she's saying at the time to like play ball.
Yeah, and just shout out to Giovanni Ribisi for giving such a good performance of being just an absolute tool. Like, he does that so well. I was just like, good job, buddy. You are achieving the objective here of your character. Oh, it's so good.
What makes me a little sad though about that character is I know it's based on Spike Jonze, who was Sophia's ex-husband, and he's a pretty prolific director in his own right, and I'm a big fan of his work. But I was talking to a friend yesterday about the movie, and I said, if Spike's like this in real life, which he probably, I mean, he's probably not exactly like this, but like he's probably got some of this energy. I don't think I would want to be around him because that is not the kind of person that I like. The way he and Kelly, the Anna Faris character that eventually comes into the story, the way that those two get on is just so awkward. Like I feel like cringe. I feel like I'm cringing when those two are having conversations. And yeah, Giovanni, he and Anna Faris both hit it out of the park in terms of being these very abrasive characters that kind of come in and bulldoze every scene. And Scarlett and Bill are much more quiet and reserved comparatively.
And the thing is, we've met people like that, like we all know the abrasive personalities in our lives, or the strangers that you come off with that you're just like, you just keep talking and it's all about you. And there's lots of like showmanship and brag. Like we've met those people. So just the like resonance of like, oh yeah, I've been in that, stuck in that conversation before. Just like that pan over into that shot of Charlotte, just you can see all the thoughts running in her mind and judgment that's happening as she's like watching this girl just ooh and ah over her husband. It's a great moment.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder like if there's a backstory with those two. 'Cause it certainly feels it feels like there's something beyond the surface with them, whether Scarlett's character knows or not. It definitely feels like something could have happened. At least that's the way I always interpret it, is they know each other more intimately than just like, hey, buddy, you've taken photos of me in the past. Like, I'm like, there's more to this, I think.
Well, and I love that both John and Kelly, they're not in the movie for very long, but I think because their characters are so different and just really out of place, not just with Charlotte and Bob, but just the way that this film is constructed. And I think a lot of just the vibe of the movie, John and Kelly don't fit. And so I think because of that, their presence, while minor, makes a really, really big impact because it is so jarring to go from this more contemplative, and obviously, like, it gets things escalate as we go through the movie, but especially at the beginning, it's pretty chill, pretty lonely, pretty melancholy, pretty contemplative, and then John and Kelly show up and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not the vibe, y'all. So I think that's really effective in helping us feel how Charlotte feels too. Like, we've been steeped in her loneliness and just her aloneness, and so then you see her interacting with these other two humans and you're like, oh, this is not the kind of human connection that we were looking for. Let's search elsewhere, shall we?
Something really quickly, while it's just sort of on the top of my mind. So going back to the conversation that, Jen, you had with their meeting at the bar, I sort of wrote down there's 4 pivotal scenes for me, effectively. Like, if I had to boil this movie down to 4 scenes, the first one would be that meeting at the bar. It's like at the 32-minute mark. It's the first time that they've actually talked to each other. They've made eye contact. She's like bought him a drink at one point. They're aware of each other, but it's the first time that they have a conversation. And I didn't pick it up until I think the third watch this time. It's the first time that they touch, and she's going to smoke a cigarette, and he whips out the lighter, and they both, like, she sort of puts her hand on his hand as the cigarette's getting lit, and it's just, again, it's, to your point earlier, it's this really, like, subtle, you blink and you miss it moment, but it's the first time they've actually made a physical connection, and yet it doesn't feel like a typical rom-com, because then they go into a conversation about how long they've each been married, and she's sort of poking at him about being in a midlife crisis, and it just feels more friendly in nature than, oh, I'm physically attracted to this person. I'm sure there's some physical attraction on both ends, possibly, but to me, it feels more friendly in nature. It doesn't feel gross when it could easily feel off-putting early, and I don't feel that at this point.
Yeah, that first interaction is it's so pure. I think it doesn't linger longer than it needs to. I was really impressed by that. It's not only subtle in their connection, but it's also short. It's so much shorter than I expected, honestly. I thought they would, like, sit and chat for a while, but then she's like, one of them's like, okay, gotta go now. And I'm like, wait, this is the moment where they meet, like, because we've been following each of their individual tracks for so long. And obviously we're anticipating the guy's gonna meet this girl, and, and it gives us enough to see the chemistry, but it doesn't allow time for it to just sit and linger and, like, stay on screen for too long. And then they go their separate ways again. And so, like the characters, we as the audience are also anticipating, when's the next time they're going to run into each other? What circumstance will they find themselves in where they get to run into each other? And even the next few interactions I think they have together, they don't even have time to really connect. I think they, like, run into each other. One's, like, going to the pool and the other one's going down to the pool, and they see each other. So there's lots of these little moments that then lead to when they have a deeper connection to go beyond just that layer one. But I was particularly impressed by that. There's nothing uncomfortable about that phase. All the other stuff comes a little bit later when it starts to, like, play with some of the expectations and then some of the discomfort that we have as the audience, that the film's, like, really trying to stoke in combination with this, like, beautiful connection that you're seeing happening. So all of that is mixed so well by the, like, later phases. I really struggled with that, I think, because I wanted to root for this, but the other cognitive part of my brain is like, oh, there's something that just doesn't sit right with me here. I want this to be pure and beautiful and an incredible human connection, but it's tainted with a little something else that I think is part of the point too. Yeah. And so kind of echoing Sarah's anxiety of just like, oh no, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I don't, because I have seen the movie's lived with me for 20 plus years, and so I've known the beats of the movie, and so when I watch it, I don't have any of that anxiety. And so it's really fascinating to me for someone who's seeing it for the first time, because again, you're not, like, especially if you're watching in 2025, you're like, where could this go? Because it could go off the rails pretty. It could get dangerous, like you really don't know what's going to happen. And it's, you had mentioned right after that bar scene, they kind of bump into each other a couple of times, which leads to the next pivotal scene for me, which is when they actually finally go out with some of her friends. And it's in that moment where the relationship shifts up relatively seismically, because you get the sense that they're starting to, their quote unquote souls are starting to connect in more of a way. They sort of feel more connected. They get like kicked out of the bar and they have to go, gallivanting throughout Tokyo to get away, and they hop in a taxi and then they go, they go karaoke singing, and there's, she seems kind of almost smitten with him at that point. He's clearly looking at her in a different way. But then even still in that scene, the way it ends with one of the more famous shots in the movie when they're sitting side by side and she puts her head on his shoulder, and it's like, okay, well maybe, like, again, Sophia's like sort of playing with the audience, like how, like she's going up to the line, she's not crossing it, and then it's coming back just a touch. But it's a delicate balance for sure.
Sophia totally knows what she's doing. She's too good at it, because every time I'm like, oh, and then we're okay, we're all right, and then there's this like really sweet moment between them. So you're like, okay, maybe I'm the problem. I need to get on board with this. But then she'll do another moment. The one that really stood out to me, where I was like, this movie is definitely knowing what it's doing, is when Charlotte falls asleep and he's carrying her back to her room and like tucks her into bed. that's the moment where I was like, yes, yeah. Like this is the moment where, if this was a different movie in another multiverse strand, this is where things would get real funky, real weird, and it doesn't. And so, but everything leading up until that, like, why does it happen that way? Because Sophia knows what she's doing, and she's playing with our expectations. She's playing with our loyalties and desires and like moral compasses and convictions all at once, because we are seeing this very real chemistry happening on screen, and it's in conversation with everything else we know about what human relationships and human connections are quote unquote supposed to look like. And she's saying, well, it can be a little messy. People are messy. Relationships are messy. Come, welcome. Let's play in the mess a little bit.
And she got me. I was stressed the whole time. I was just worried. I was like, oh no, what did we agree to watch? What movie do we have to talk about? Oh my gosh. Like I was so concerned the whole time for Charlotte. So yeah, you said it, Jen. You just want to take her and just go put her somewhere else where she's safe. That is how I felt the whole time. I was so nervous.
I do have to ask you both, while we're on the topic of this little moment and karaoke's on my mind. I find also Sophia's got an incredible talent for music. She really hits the right notes throughout the whole film with the musical choices just throughout the thing. And then obviously the karaoke, some very funky choices for what they're singing. They're doing like Sex Pistols, and then they're doing Pretenders, and Scarlett nails that Pretenders Brass in Pocket. But do either of you karaoke? And if so, do you have a karaoke song?
I would love to know if Sarah karaoke's in. She has a karaoke song. I don't think we ever talked about this before.
No, I do not karaoke. Here's my thoughts on karaoke. It is only ever fun if you are intoxicated, and the more intoxicated, the better. And I don't drink anymore, so I have never karaokeed, and I don't intend to ever karaoke. So that is my personal stance. But if it's for you, have fun. Live your best life. It is not for me, though.
Solid. That is very true. That is very true. A little looser, people just have a better time, They belt it out a little stronger than they would have and hit those high notes. I love me some karaoke. I think it's a great time. I think it's like so fun to be with people that are willing to like be a little silly with it. Sometimes you karaoke with people that are a little too uptight and you're like, y'all, this is not American Idol. Like, it's okay. Like, be off key, dance, like the uptight ones. I'm not down for that. Okay, we're not down for some uptight karaoke. But I would go to karaoke song. I don't know if I necessarily have one. The one that comes to mind that's just fun is One Two Step by Sierra, specifically the opening verse of that and then the first chorus. Everything after that, I'm like, whatever, we can change the song. But that opening section is a good time to sing with people.
Did
The other one that's a hit, though, is Mr. Brightside. That one, people go nuts. You lose your voice. No speaking the next day.
did you do karaoke in Tokyo when you were there? It seems
We
like
did
a good
not.
time.
Yeah, we did not. But we did for my birthday back in February. And I woke up the next morning. I was like, am I getting sick? Why does my throat feel scratchy and dry and hoarse? No, we were not getting sick. We just had a great karaoke session.
I'm
What about you?
much like Sarah. I don't drink, and I find that the time that karaoke's best is when you're intoxicated, which when I was younger in my 20s, I was much more prone to go out and do the silly things like that. My problem was one of my good friends actually tried out for American Idol, and he almost made it like to the show, and he could belt some Michael Jackson like nobody. And so
Wow.
whenever we would go out in karaoke, it's like, why am I going to go up either before or after Greg? Because he's going to hit MJ and we're all going to look like fools because he's out there actually nailing it. And as you can tell by listening to me, I have a very deep voice. So a lot of music is not conducive to my voice. But when I'm forced on a karaoke stage, I can usually hit Queen's Crazy Little Thing Called Love. That's my go-to because it's the only time Freddie gets really deep, and I'm definitely a Freddie Mercury guy. So if you get me on the karaoke stage, that's my one.
Love it. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Great choice. Great choice indeed. Yeah. There's some really high songs. My gosh. Anything by Taylor Swift. We made the mistake of playing a bunch of Taylor Swift. She sings in a register that is wild. Chapel Roan, crazy register. Don't do those. There's some songs that you think is going to be really great, and then it starts playing and you get to the part and you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, everybody. We need to change the song. I would like to
I
breathe.
do love, I love how much Bill Murray in this movie is comfortable in his own skin because he sucks at singing. Let's just put it out there. But he's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I've got enough like charisma and there's enough captivating about me that I can be a terrible singer and I can still hit this number well enough. And he just goes for it. I enjoy Bill Murray quite a bit. And he makes this movie to a large degree in terms of his ability to improv because, and Sophia's gone on record. It's funny that she won the best original screenplay Oscar because she has said most of this movie, most of what she wrote on the page does not make it into the film because she's just letting the two of them sort of make the scenes up in the moment. And I also found it really fascinating going back to like how Sophia captured Tokyo in such a beautiful way. She would go around the city and take pictures of spots and of things, and then she would find a way to work in a scene to replicate what she had just taken a photo of. And I thought that's a really fascinating way to go about directing. And they didn't have a lot of permits. Like when they're running away through the arcade and stuff, you can tell that they are kind of on the move, and it's sort of this guerrilla filmmaking style. Sophia's brilliant. And she sort of captures this ball of chaos that Bill Murray is on a set. And she captures the essence of him and lets him sort of be Bill Murray. And yet he's also still restrained because there's times he can be a little bit too much like Will Ferrell. I feel like sometimes Will Ferrell, if you don't have somebody who can sort of put guardrails around him, he just becomes way too much. And that's how I feel about Bill. Like Bill's in his perfect zone in this movie, thanks to Sophia knowing how to capture that magic.
And there are so many good little Bill Murray bits too. Like I loved the whiskey commercial the commercial and the photo shoot. Hilarious. I was like, yes, Bill Murray, you do your thing. And then I also loved the hospital scene.
Oh my gosh.
And what really got me in that scene was the two ladies in the background who were just cracking up the entire time. I was like, oh my gosh, how long did this shoot take so that they are laughing to that degree? Like, oh my gosh, it's just so much fun to see Bill Murray be able to really shine and bring his unique sense of humor. And like you said, Andrew, and then there are those more restrained pieces that perfectly balance that out.
There's a lot about his humor too that is so like small and quick, moment to moment, that I thought was really fun. So it's like so much of what makes the whiskey photo shoot scenes really funny is just seeing his like facial expressions react to the people around him, when he's being told to like be a mysterious man and he's like trying to understand and then kind of judging it, but then also being like, all right, you want mysterious man? Let me fully commit to it. So like those little bits I thought were such golden moments throughout this movie. The other one that I really loved is when he's in an elevator by himself. The elevator door closes and it's a mirrored elevator door, and he's just mean mugging at himself for a few seconds and then gives himself a little smile. Cut to the next scene. And it's so funny. Like that's his character to a T, is like kind of a grump, kind of just like bumbling through life, but also like just a goon at the end of the day too. And so what a great, efficient few seconds to communicate who this character is and who this person is, and do it in a really funny way.
And it's sort of another one of the big points I have about this movie is just the Bill Murray mystique always comes to mind when I think about this movie, because for people who aren't familiar, he's very famous or infamous in Hollywood for he doesn't have an agent. And if you need to get a hold of Bill Murray, there's like an 800 number effectively that you call and you leave a voicemail on a machine and he maybe checks it or he maybe doesn't. And Sophia had to leave him like hundreds of messages, and she had to reach out to Wes Anderson, who was a mutual friend. And even up until a week before the shoot, she didn't know if he was going to show up. And that just kind of like sums up Bill Murray. Like there's always these stories. I live in St. Louis, which is close enough to Chicago where Bill Murray's from. And so you hear all of these like urban legend stories about him showing up at like a frat party and doing the dishes for people and just mingling with regular people in everyday life. And he's just such a fascinating character that it feels like what he gives you on screen is very much the guy that you're getting in real life. Like he's a little eccentric and he's a little strange, but he's so charismatic and he's so quick-witted and dynamic that you can't kind of help but love him. He's wonderful. I'm curious if either of the two of you thought of this, or maybe I'm out of maybe I'm the only one who thought of this. There's a scene early when he has like I think she's a prostitute, come to his room, and it's a very silly scene because he doesn't quite know what she's doing there, and she's asking him to rip her stockings, and he's having a hard time understanding the L and the R. And there was a moment where I'm like, is this offensive? And I honestly don't even know the answer to this, and I'm wondering if either of the two of you have any thoughts on that, because it feels offensive, but it also feels like there is like language barriers. Sometimes you do not fully understand what somebody in a different country is saying, and there can be a challenge there. But I was like, is this necessary? Because it does feel a little bit mean-spirited to Japanese people and the way they talk. And I wonder if either of the two of you picked up on that at all.
That was one of the things that I was going to bring up at the end, is just like, if there's a few things that I think didn't age as well in some of the jokes and how they're played to be. And part of it's being like just like being confused and being like the challenges of being a foreigner in another country. Like inevitably there's things that you will miss culturally and you will be rude. Like you must go with the humility to know that you're going to be rude somehow in some way. You need to try and reduce the amount that you are. But there's a couple of comments that are really little throwaway lines that he makes throughout the film that you're a little bit like, I think this movie could work without those things. Like there's one moment where he's like, why is your face so straight or straight like that? Like, why are you not expressing? And I'm like, well, actually, that's a very real cultural dynamic for a lot of people in Asian culture, of like the difference in ability to feel comfortable to express so fully in public with strangers. It's just different from like a lot of Western countries that have more expressive personalities or cultures that celebrate that, in fact, versus those that are a little bit tend to be more stoic. So there's like a few little examples of that where you're like, this movie we could cut a few of those things, But I also think that like our sensitivity around these things have changed as decades have passed too. So that might have flown by and been okay in the 2000s. So like Sarah was saying, like this is definitely of its time, and that probably they wouldn't make it into a 2025 version of this movie, but our awareness of those things I think were different, definitely decades ago. So I think it's a product of maybe just everyone's awareness of cultural dynamics. So there's a few things like that where I'm like, yeah, all right, we can cut these. I'm going to cut these from my memory. Let's see. Any other big things that we wanted to mention and discuss with Lost in Translation before we wrap?
So the two, so I've already listed two of the pivotal scenes for me, which is the first meeting, and then when they go out, those two feel very important in their relationship structure. And then the third one is the scene where they're both awake and he slips the note under her door and they end up spending the night together. And we've already kind of mentioned it, when there's that little moment where he's touching her toe or whatever it is. That's a very pivotal scene because of the conversation that the two are having in bed, and she's asking him if things are going to get better, and he's like, not really, and sort of joking. And then he also has this deeply profound thing that never really hit me up until I watched it this time, because every time up until now I didn't have children of my own. But he says the first kid being born is the most terrifying day of your life, and that hit so close to me that it's never hit me that way before. But I remember the day my first was born, and I always tell people now who are having kids or whatever, if they ever ask for advice, I certainly don't give away advice. That's not my place to do. But if somebody asks, I always say, like, that first moment that your child's born, everything else kind of goes away. And the only thing you're thinking about is, wow, I have so much responsibility all of a sudden. And he even mentions in the thing, he says, your life as you know it is gone, never to return. They learn to walk, they learn to talk. You want to be with them. And they turn out to be the most delightful people you will ever meet in your life. And I thought, wow, what an amazing bit of dialogue right there that really, again, cuts to, there's more to the relationship. He's imparting some knowledge in that moment. And so again, they're in a very intimate moment in a bed together. And yet they're having this deep conversation. She's also a philosophy major, which is also something that's prevalent throughout the film. Like, she's emotionally and mentally stimulated by him because he's not having these very superficial conversations that her husband is having with her. He has no intention to have philosophical conversations with his wife. And so, like, I think she just wants to connect on that level. And so I love everything about that now, being a father myself. And then, of course, the final fourth pivotal scene's the end, which, the great ambiguity of what happens there at the end.
I loved that conversation that you were just hitting on. And I think it really effectively speaks to kind of what we've been talking about the way that this movie really subverts expectations in the, like, rom-com and, like, romance genre. I feel like that genre of film and, like, movies that are specifically, like, marketed to women are all about, like, get married and have kids. Like, that is the message. And I loved that in that conversation. It's very much like, hey, these things are really hard. Like, sure, there's some good things about them too, but it's hard. And that's just a part of life. And so I love that bit of honesty too. And that is a really pivotal moment because they are becoming, like, more intimate together, not physically, but emotionally. And that sharing of truth and life experiences and fears and worries and all of that is so important. But I loved that moment of honesty. I was like, yes, let's have more moments of honesty like this. And then I love that it kind of ends with Bob saying to her, like, you're not hopeless. And I love that this whole movie, she's been kind of lonely, listless, like, wondering, like, what is my purpose in life? Like, what am I doing with my life? And for him to just be able to so succinctly and effectively just nail it. Like, you are not hopeless. Like, you'll get it together. It's okay. I thought that was so tender and so important in that moment.
And I think what makes that moment feel really meaningful is that he doesn't have it together either. Like, I really appreciate how much we see him struggling to, like, be a good father, to be a good husband, to show up for his family, to show up for his job. Like, he's just as lost as she is. And so they're almost not trying to, like, solve each other or fix each other. There's no power dynamic where like one of them is the inspiration, the muse for the other that's caught up in their orbit. They're kind of just able to share in this moment of like, we both are kind of figuring life out and it's confusing, and we can just sit in the fact that we both feel this together, but we're going to walk forward together and we're going to choose to walk forward together. So I just appreciate that he's not this like really polished, like on top of he's not. He's actually like really lost, maybe even more lost than she is, honestly. So I really think that his words carry more weight because he's not coming from a place of being in a great spot, but he's also in the thick of it with her. And so everything he says feels more resonant. And I think she can feel the difference too, versus being told like from this person who seems to be glitzy and glamorous and have everything figured out and so have this aura around them. Like that the words carry a different weight when it comes from someone that feels like they're in it with you.
I also think it's really interesting, and I don't have an answer for it, but it feels intentional. He cheats on his wife in the film with the lounge singer.
Yeah.
And he's had opportunities in theory if he were to like quote unquote make a move on Charlotte at some point, and he chooses not to. And then he, cheats on his wife with that lounge singer. And I just think that's interesting that Sophia chose to go that direction with the story. And it's like, it's not a big thing in terms of like, it's not a huge like plot point, but it is noteworthy. And it makes me think differently about how he thinks about Charlotte. And then I also find it really fascinating. She, of course, gets quite jealous of him having, just a connection with someone else because, again, she's sort of all alone. And then they have this brief little falling out, and yet they also come back together very quickly, which I appreciate. That, like, I feel like they both kind of understand this. This movie happens in a very short span of time, and this relationship, for lack of a better term, is a very quick roller coaster relationship. And I like that they both immediately kind of understand, okay, what are we doing here? Like, this is kind of silly to like have these weird jealous moments and this tension between us. Like, we're friends at the end of the day, or, like, I like the way it resolves pretty quickly from that. It just, everything about this movie just subverts everything else in the genre that was coming out at that time.
And I loved that argument scene at the restaurant, because I think it really effectively captures the way that, like, when you know somebody really well, you can injure them really easily if you're not careful. And it's not like a big, like you said, it's not a big thing. It's not a big scene. But man, those insults that they hurl at each other, they hit. And it's like, oh gosh, okay, that was a direct hit. Holy moly. But I think it's so smart to have that be at kind of like the end of his journey. And they have that hard stop of he's leaving. And so they have to make up, and they have to realize like, oh, that's not what we're going to dwell on. But they have that, resolution that happens. But I agree. I thought that was really effective in not only subverting expectations, but revealing more truths about human nature and relationships in a really efficient way.
And when he says he needs to leave and they kind of are realizing that their time together is nearing its end, I love how non-melodramatic it is. Like, she's like, stay with me. And he's like, I can't. And he's like, okay, true. Like the other version of this that we've seen a million times in Hollywood movies in general is the like tearful, like goodbye, and then like the like delusion of let's run away together and and build a life together and let's dream, but then we can't actually do that. Like, I just love how they both had such clear understanding and wisdom to know this is beautiful for what it is. The realities are like it is going to be even more great for us to just remember this for what it is, and not they're neither of them are deluded in believing this could be anything more than this beautiful time together with a stranger. And that's pretty cool to see on screen. We usually get the big dramatic stuff for these moments.
Now, I can't believe we've made it an hour plus now at this point without addressing the elephant in the room, which is sort of the lingering question from this movie for 22 years now. What was said in that final moment? I don't know if either of the two of you looked up like different fan theories. There's a lot of stuff out there, but what do you think he said to her in that final culmination of, he for people who haven't seen the movie, they separate and he's sort of left unsatisfied, and he sees her in the street as he's driving away in a taxi, and he quickly jumps out of the taxi and runs up to her or walks up to her, and they have a moment, and he whispers something in her ear, and the crowd, Sophia wisely like pumps in a lot of like ambient noise of the crowd of people walking by, and so you have no idea what's being said. What do you think was said?
That sushi wasn't so good the other day, wasn't it? Just kidding. And she tearfully is like, "You're right, it wasn't so good." I love that we can't hear it, first of all. I think that's genius. I think it's so poetic. I loved every bit of it. Once again, the movie stops after that moment. No kiss happens after that. It's great. Because I think that the poetic like meaning of this intimate moment that even the audiences will never know what's shared between them. It's so good. It's so genius. Yeah, she's so like tearful after that moment that I assumed he was saying something like for her, like not even about their time together, but like specifically for her, because there's such a feeling afterwards of like she is forever changed and she's moving in the rest of her life in such a different way. So I read it as some kind of like really meaningful, inspirational speaking life and identity over her and all that she's capable of. But that's my inner like tug on my heartstrings, I will fall and fold for any movie that can do that. Self, that's just like, he encouraged her in all the ways she's never been able to be. Well, that's my version. Sarah, what's your version? Is it a little closer to that sushi wasn't so great?
Honestly, I really didn't think about it much. At first, when he like first runs up to her, I was like, man, is he gonna like tell her a joke? And that's clearly not what happens because of her reaction. But I was like, well, the movie doesn't want me to know, so I don't have to know. Okay, the movie's over. Let's be done. Yeah, I didn't think about it very much because I don't know. I didn't need that. Like, the movie told me what I needed to know, and yeah, I'm good. I'm satisfied.
It's funny because that's what Sophia also has said. I was really going down the rabbit hole on this one. She said she's surprised that the ending has become this big thing, which is wild because it feels very intentional to leave it ambiguous. She said it was just kind of a throwaway scene, and she was going to put a line in after the fact and just never got around to it and just left it that way, which is a very interesting directorial decision, which worked to the movie's benefit, I think. There's two camps online. One, I guess there was a version released where you can like crank up the audio and so I cranked up the audio on Prime Video where I was watching it, and you can kind of hear what he's saying, not fully, but one theory is he's telling her, I have to be leaving, but I won't let that come between us. I don't necessarily love that being the line. The other line is, when John is ready for his next business trip, go up to that man and tell him the truth, okay? And I think that's if I'm going to have to pick one or the other, it's like, stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
He needs to know where you stand with this like there is some unresolved stuff between John and Charlotte, and I think Bob has helped push her to have more self-confidence and more belief and value in herself, and so I want to believe that that's the truth. I don't know.
Well said.
I don't think there is any. I don't know if there is anything to it, quite honestly, but that's the way I've always felt about it. I do, as much as the kiss sort of sours the moment, I do really like that immediately after the kiss, when he starts walking away, for the first time in the film, he's like full, wide-eyed smiling, like happier than he's ever been in the whole film. Like, I feel like he's finally out of his depression for the first time and is ready to go back and take on his challenge. Like, I feel like they're both in a better position because of each other. And that's like my big takeaway from the movie at the end there, regardless of like what was said or where they're at emotionally as in their little short 4-day relationship. They both have grown as people because of each other. And I think that's a really profound, awesome message for the film. Though I do wonder, and I don't know if either of the two of you do, I wonder if either relationship works. Does Bob go back with his wife and do they live another 25 plus years? And do Charlotte and John stick together? I don't know.
God, I hope not. I hope not.
See,
I
yeah,
feel more confident. This is based on nothing but vibes, but I think she chooses to walk away. I think that like
Yeah.
just where she's at in life and how much her perspective is like completely shifted and molded, and the fact that she's experienced deep connection like this and knows what to look for now, I think that she walks away. I don't know about Bob. I actually think Bob may make the choice to continue to commit and stay with this family, because I think it's suggested that he's had like so many different wives in the past, right? Like at least 4 other wives or something along the way. So he's explored a lot, and I feel like his win is like choosing to commit and be faithful to his wife. It's suggested that he's kind of just played around in the realm of women for a lot of his life, and perhaps his growth is like, it is good. It is an honor to be able to like care for a family and provide that stability for us. There's just, because there's so many moments where there's like Fax is coming in with like, you missed your son's birthday and what color do you want the shells? Like him being able to stay and not run and leave the relationship and build a life together, I think is perhaps his win and his growth and his maturity. But other people may argue with me because they maybe want like, I don't know, happiness and deeper connection for him. But I don't know. There's something honorable about him choosing to finally stay with something.
I agree. I think he's in a position in his life where he's probably like, and again, relationships are different, whether like
Yeah.
Charlotte's been married for 2 years, and
Yeah.
if something tumultuous happens in a 2-year marriage, maybe it's harder to get through that. And I'm not advocating for cheating on your spouse ever, but if you're with somebody for 25 years, maybe, you're in a different position than a 2-year relationship where the bonds are strong enough that you collectively can overcome that. I don't know. I'm not in that situation, fortunately, thankfully, but I feel like Bob and his wife tough it out, and I feel like Charlotte 100% dumps John sooner than later. Like I feel like she has seen past his bullshit.
Mm. It's almost like you get the sense from the beginning of the movie that she's always known, but maybe didn't have the courage or the strength to be able to walk away. And after this period of time, she has now been given and encouraged that this is actually right for you to walk away. Because like when her husband's talking at the beginning of the movie, she's just kind of like, what? Like, so you can sense that it's not like she's deluded into believing this is amazing. She's like, what am I doing here? And so this time period giving her the competence to walk away is her win. At least that's what we want for her. So we'll just say that's her win in our headcanon. Sarah, what about you? What do you think? How do you think these relationships play out?
Yeah, I definitely agree about Charlotte. And I am going to be the dark storm cloud and say that Bob tries to make it work, but Lydia actually leaves him, is how I would read that.
Oh,
like,
nice.
Because I
like
could
that.
see like them kind of settling into an equilibrium where he's like gone a lot. And so she is managing by herself, and then finds like a weird sense of, I don't know, something. The fact that she has to do it all by herself, and like him being far away is a good way for her to like guilt trip him. So then if he comes and tries to make it work, she'd probably be like, no, I'm done. Peace out. I get money from you every month so that I can raise my kids the way that I want to. So that's my very cynical read of it, is that if he were to come and to try and like, I don't know, be a very present husband and father, she'd be like, no, get out of here. I don't want that. So
I like that, Jen, you had mentioned earlier in the movie that Charlotte's kind of seeing through John. And there's a moment where he's like, why are you smoking? You shouldn't be smoking. And she's like, I'll quit when I want to. Like, she's already kind of like starting to like find her voice and be like, I'm my own person. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do regardless of what. So like, there's already inklings throughout the film that she's steadfast in her decision making, and she will like see past him at a certain point, and it's coming pretty quickly, I would imagine.
And we're rooting for it. Like, you go, girl. Leave him. You can do so much better. He sucks.
Anybody better.
Please. He also, it seems to be suggested, or at least I got the sense that I don't think he's been very faithful either. Like, I think he's had some misdemeanors in the past. Just in that conversation with Anna Faris's character, when they're kind of vibing and Charlotte's just standing there, he so clearly overcompensates, almost out of like guilt or something, to like grab her and have this big show of how this is his wife and whatnot. And so I'm like, you seem a little shady, my dude. Like, I feel like there's something happening here. And I think she's smart enough to know that too. But, you know, it's hard to face the things that you don't want to face and admit the things that you know might be true. So I think he's not all clean. Yeah. One last thing that I wanted to mention that I thought was really great, and this thread throughout the film I thought added so much dimension, is the consistency of us coming back to the hotel bar. Like, I think we end up at the hotel bar like 5 or 6 times in this movie, and it feels almost like this progress checkpoint, you know, like every time we come back to the bar, their relationship is no longer the same, and kind of the familiarity of being in the place where they first met and feeling the difference and the delta in how much their relationship is changing and evolving, I thought was just a really cool use of a set piece and kind of a location. Probably great for their budget too. They could just film a lot of scenes there at one point. But also just this awareness of like, they are not the same every time they come here. And because that place is stable and the same, you can really see and feel the difference in their relationship as that is the backdrop. So I just thought that was a really cool device and used very well. So I really loved that hotel bar placement and kind of continuing motif.
Another silly thing that I just want to point out is the use of the fax machine in this. It's so
like,
good.
What's Lydia sending now?
Right? Like, Lydia's just constantly sending him faxes, sending him like swatches of carpet and all of those things. Hilarious. But I loved that moment when Charlotte is like, yeah, I'll fax you a map of how to get to location. I was just like, that is incredible. I had forgotten about fax machines in the year of our Lord 2025. And so that was just really fun to be back in a simpler time when people communicated via fax machine.
When I started my current job 10 years ago, we had a fax machine, and I had no idea how to operate the thing then. Like, the idea that I could operate a fax machine now, why is there a phone attached to this thing? What is happening here?
But they're kind of magical, like, you know, like when it's like this like slow reveal of what the message is gonna be. It's fun, yeah. That makes sure there's like such a clear lingering on those shots too, like the shelves, like the drawing, the architectural rendering of the shelves are coming through, and you're like, what is Lydia doing?
I do love at the end, the very last fax that he gets is on the morning of he's leaving, and it's a hand drawn heart from his son, and I get so much like artwork from my kids, and I saw that and I was like, oh, that's such a sweet gesture from his son, and you know, Lydia sending it over, which is again making me go, I hope they stick together. Like, I feel like there's something in that relationship still. Like, she still wants him to a degree.
She does. He's terrible to her, though. He's so cold on the phone. I was like, come on, dude. You need to give her a little something. She's like trying to manage the home, okay? She's planning like the kid's birthday party, trying to build a home together. He's like, I don't care what color it is. It doesn't matter to me. All right, my dude. We've got some work to do. So I like, Sarah, your theory where she walks away. I'm okay with that one. My cynical self's also okay with that one.
You go, Lydia. She clearly has a lot of agency and does not mind speaking her mind. So
No, she did not mind.
Lydia, you just do what you're going to do. We support you.
Yeah.
In this world of sequels we live in, give us a Lost in Translation too, right? I feel like there's more meat on this bone.
Lydia goes to have like an Eat, Pray, Love summer somewhere. Post-breakup, just looking to find herself after getting rid of her Bill Murray husband. That'd be great. All right. Well, this is fun. What a fun note to end on. Just like justice for Lydia, and we're ready for the sequel.
Send us your sequel ideas.
Yes. We want to hear. Well, this is our review and discussion of Lost in Translation from 2003. You can find it available on Prime Video, I believe, to stream. And probably some other locations, but definitely on Prime Video. It's available right now. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. We're so excited for that 2003 Oscars year that we're going to be you'll see more 2003 movies coming up here on the feed, which we're pumped for. Big thank you to you, Andrew, for joining us and talking Lost in Translation, Bill Murray, all the things with us. This is so fun.
All my pleasure. Like, I tell people this all the time. I'm not BSing you when I say it. You're my favorite show. There's no place I'd rather be talking movies than with the two of you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. The amount of times that you have helped my show with collaborations, I want to shout the two of you out. You're always so generous with your time. I appreciate that so much. What you did for the Women's History Month, for people who are listening to this have no idea what I'm talking about. I did a big collaboration where I did a Women's History Month thing, and I had a whole bunch of different female voices and podcasters talk about it. And I didn't want to be involved because I didn't think my voice was necessary on that discussion at all.
So
and
wise.
You two, it was so wise. You don't need to hear me talk about women. Like, let the women talk about women. And you two kicked it off for me and set the tempo, and it was amazing, and I'm forever grateful to you two. It's still the highest rated episode of the show, and I'm so proud of that fact. So thank you two.
That's so cool. That's really neat. No, just the intentionality you put into that was so incredible. I think like we rave about that all the time. Your awareness and wisdom in putting that together was on point. Feelings are mutual. You're one of our favorite pod friends. We absolutely adore everything that you do on the show. Andrew is the most incredible community builder, by the way. Like, there's a gifting you have in this area to bring people together and connect people that maybe wouldn't have never met, that I'm like, you've got great things ahead of you. It's amazing. Where can people find more of you, all of your movie thoughts and rewriting of history, literally, on the interwebs?
I'm on all the places where you get your podcasts at the Revisionist Almanac. And I'm on all the social media platforms. The handle's REV Almanac. And I'm very active and engaged everywhere. So if you want to reach out and have a conversation with me about movies, I'm more than happy to discuss anything and everything at any time. And my space is a place for everyone to feel of equal value. And I want every movie opinion to be validated. And so, like, there's no wrong opinions. Everyone's opinion is of equal importance to me. And so if you find me on social media, I love talking to people, and it's my favorite thing to do. So come check me out.
Love it. Yeah, amazing. It's an incredible show. You've had such an amazing like slew of guests that have been so dynamic, and yeah, there's a lot more upcoming too, which is exciting. So we'll include all of the links to that in the show notes and all that goodness. So please go follow Andrew. He's an amazing human in general, and then all of his movie thoughts and opinions are really rich and insightful. So we can't recommend it enough. All right, well, our name, Movies and Us, sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. Everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about Lost Translation and your theories for what was whispered at the end. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at moviesnestpod, or email us at moviesnestpod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us. We will be back next week with a slightly different episode format. We're super excited to be able to talk to the crew and kind of the visionaries behind the short film Liquor Bank. This is really exciting. I know, Andrew, you talked to them just a few weeks ago or days ago and just had them on your pod as well.
Yeah, so I had them a couple of weeks ago. So at the point that your episode goes up with the two of, I think you're having Adam and Marcellus on.
Yeah.
Our episodes will be going up the same week, I think a day apart, which will be a nice little, companion to each other. But you're going to have the best time talking to them. And
good.
Wonderful guys, incredible short film.
Yeah, so good. And it's just amazing to be able to support like indie filmmakers that have such vision and passion for this space and are truly creating new things to add to the corpus and for us to consume. So just honestly, anyone who's a creative and who's an artist in any way, like we're here to support, and like we want to hear your thoughts and intentions behind creating everything that you create. So that's really exciting for us. It's just one of the things that is really important to us here at Movies Nest too. So yeah, we're super stoked for that. That'll be coming out next week. In the meantime, we hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.